Hello, hello. Welcome to Birthing the Gifts. I am clinical psychologist Dr. Kyla Holmes, and here at Birthing the Gifts, we provide a safe and compassionate space to grow your God-given gifts. In this interview series, we discuss the process of giving birth to your gifts. So this is the It's a Process conversation series. And we've been expanding that series. If you follow us on YouTube or Facebook, Instagram, or social media platforms, you'll know that this conversation series has been expanded to other topics such as the role of prayer and grace in birthing your gifts, the role of parents in helping children birth their gifts, the LGBTQ community and family acceptance. So, all the different variables that are important in people birthing their gifts. So, today we have with us my colleague and friend, Amy Green. Hello, Amy. Thank you so much. Guys, usually when I come on, Amy, I do just a little bit of how I know the person and what led to this particular episode or segment of the It's a Process conversation series. So I met Amy, I think Amy, what was it, like 4 or 5 years ago? I feel like it
Yeah.
was pre-pandemic for sure when we met.
Mhm.
So, and as I've gotten to know you, Amy, through being colleagues. So we're both therapists providing mental health therapy to folks in the community. And so I've really come to just be just impressed with, inspired by your passion and your dedication to walking alongside people in their healing process and their growth. And one of the topics that we've talked about is how to support people when they're trying to navigate all the terrain, I guess, of dating and all of what comes along with dating. So today, you all, we're going to focus mainly on dating and healthy, intimate partner relationships. But before we get into that, Amy, if you could tell us a little bit about you, because of course we want to know some about you and your process of birthing your gift. When did you even choose to go into the mental health field as a profession?
I mean, to be honest, I was absolutely sure that I was going to be a doctor. My stepdad is an emergency room doctor. My mom is a nurse. I was going to do it. Love school. It's like just do the most school I possibly can. And then when I moved to Arkansas to go to Hendrix and was allowed to pick electives, the ones that really drew me in were psychology and anthropology classes.
Oh.
And once I got in there, I was absolutely fascinated by the material. Like, I loved it. I loved comparing the different theories. I loved wondering about how the brain works and how we can help people. I mean, I was obsessed with those
Mm-hmm.
classes. And then
Mm-hmm.
when I got to pick my electives for the next term, I was like, ooh, as many psychology as I can do. And then finally it was over. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm already halfway
Right.
to getting
Right.
my or not master's, my degree in psychology, my undergraduate degree in psychology. So I
Mm-hmm.
just went with it. Plus, I mean, even though the classes were really rigorous, I found like they were like second nature. I would study the material not just because I wanted to get a good grade, but because I really wanted to know that information. Like I really did, loved it. And
Mm-hmm.
so that started my path. And
Mm-hmm.
then right after school, started a family, have 3 children. And during that time, I didn't want to, just stay at home and I didn't want to just put them in a daycare. And so I got trained to be a birth to three Montessori teacher. And as I was doing that, a huge part of Montessori curriculum is mindfulness,
Oh.
teaching children mindfulness, everything you have to do mindfully. And
Mm-hmm.
then and then after a bout of sickness, I got Lyme's disease, and so I was
Mm-hmm.
pretty not good for a couple of
Mm-hmm.
years and not able to work much, but just desperate to, get back out there in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
so I found, oh, You know what? I forgot to tell you how I went to graduate school. I missed a step on my path, and I'm going
You
to
missed
go
a step
back.
on the path. Well,
I
I
missed
want
a
to get
step.
all the steps on the path. So let me circle back to something even before graduate school for a sec.
Okay.
Because when people are listening to this, and I'm going to be sure, guys, anybody is listening, we're going to get to the dating conversation. But I think what we're talking about now, if I could go ahead and interject is when we think about development, right? Is a particular kind of I want to call it like a model for development that talks about what healthy development looks like for us to get to our healthiest kind of emotional and psychological state. And in this model, and for anybody that's interested, I love Eric Erickson. So it's Eric Erickson's model of psychosocial development, but it talks about the importance, well, at least this is what I gleaned from it, is the importance of having a sense of who you are before you get into intimate partner relationship before it can really be healthy. So it doesn't mean you have to know the fullness of who you are, but kind of, you know, be figuring that out. Be somewhat intentional about knowing yourself. So that's kind of why I want to have this conversation first, Amy. But and I want it to be helpful to people that are listening. So one of the things that you said, I just kind of jotted it down here when you were at Hendrix. You said, and by the way, I graduated from Hendrix as well. I don't know that we had, yeah, I don't know if we had talked about that before.
2003.
Okay, okay. I graduated in oh what? Interesting. Okay, okay, okay. Awesome, awesome. Okay, Hendrix grad. There you go. So, but you said when you were there, psychology and anthropology, and you use words like I was fascinated, I was obsessed, I really wanted to know more. Like you really love the information, right? So when people are birthing their gifts and trying to get a sense of what direction do I need to go in, it sounds like that's one way to know when you're fascinated, where it's like you want to know more. It's something in you that pulls you to want to know more. Is that what you felt when you were there?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. It didn't become an option after that. I knew
Okay.
I had to go down that path for
Yeah.
sure. I
Okay.
was,
It
yes.
was not an option. You knew you had to go down that path. I love that right there. I knew I had to go down that path. So you went down that path. And then I know you continue to talk about you were in Montessori school. So if you could talk about where in that path did graduate school fit in?
Okay, so when my youngest child was at school age, I wanted to go back to school too. I wanted to go back and learn, so I went ahead and got into the graduate school at Little Rock for the social work
Okay.
program. And I loved it. I was so
Mhm.
excited to be in school again. I had my rolly backpack
Okay.
and I was
Okay.
raising my hand in
Uh-huh.
classes and taking really
Uh-huh.
good notes. Like, so I knew I was still on that right path with that. And
Mm-hmm.
it took it, there was a break, like I kind of mentioned earlier, there was a break in between school and a little bit of working with kiddos through the school system. And
Okay.
then um, I wasn't able to work for a while because of sickness. And then I was on Facebook and I just saw this post from a therapist, Stephanie Johnson, saying she needed help once a week with co-leading a DBT skills group. And I'm like, I can do 1 day a week at this point. I
Okay.
know I'm getting better. And so
Uh-huh.
I jumped in and I fell in love with learning DBT from that point on. Just
Wow.
adored it.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
good. You said you jumped in because see what happened. I appreciate you talking about that, Amy, because sometimes when people are on their path and they kind of have a sense of what they're excited about, life happens.
Mhm.
Life happens, things happen, like you said, medical conditions happen, maybe family emergencies and situations come up. But I'm hearing you say something was still in you that said, I still want to do that. So you
Mhm.
still jumped into it. If you could just say a little bit about it, and then we'll probably shift the conversation over a little bit. But can you say a little bit about what helped you, even in the midst of you said you had young children, you were dealing with health, how were you still, and what helped you to still push forward and continue?
Well, I found that I am at my happiest and most energetic and healthy emotionally and psychologically when I'm learning. When I'm trying to apply new skills to myself. And so
Mhm.
actually like getting back in So that process of doing therapy and helping people out was helpful for me too.
Mm-hmm.
It brought me joy. It
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to handle the difficult times when I had my favorite thing, learning,
Mm-hmm.
right there with me.
Wow. Hmm. I love that. I love that. And sometimes what I do, Amy, is just kind of re-emphasize very powerful words that you said. And I hope people are listening to say, when you're going through a difficult time, when you have stressors in your life, you're saying what helped for you is knowing that self-awareness again, to know what makes me the happiest. What brings me that energy? What brings me mental and psychological health? And for you, you knew learning did that. It sounds like you said that was even a part of your own healing
Oh,
too.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then as I'm learning, I'm also teaching my teenagers what I'm learning. And so my household became calmer. My
Mm-hmm.
teenagers were using very well-developed language about their
Mm-hmm.
emotional state and being
Mm-hmm.
proud of how they handled situations well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had this trickle-down effect of goodness into my home life as well. So even though it was stressful and a lot of work, it was also really rewarding and it had some big
Mm-hmm.
payoffs.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So you saw rewards from what you were learning in your personal life, and then you just continued to grow professionally. I just appreciate you sharing it, Amy, because that's great. So your undergraduate degree, psychology, Hendrix, and then graduate school, master's in social work from UALR, University of Arkansas at Little Rock. Um, what type of clients do you feel like at this point? Because I know you mentioned DBT, and we'll talk more so people will know what that is, dialectical behavior therapy. That's a therapy approach that people are using, and I think becoming increasingly used. It's used more and more often. But what type of clients do you generally work with?
I like working with adults who are already at the point where they are motivated to learn and they're ready to go.
Yeah.
I don't like spending a lot of time convincing people that this will be good for them. I'm like, when you're ready, we'll go full throttle.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the folks that I work with are highly sensitive people emotionally. And so got a lot of, you know, anxiety issues and also personality disorders, which, there's a large emotion regulation problem that causes personality issues,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that I tend to lean more towards working with women, but I also really enjoy working with guys who are prepared to get in and do the hard work. I,
Mm-hmm.
and some late teens if they're smart and motivated.
Okay. Okay. So some late teens, more so adults, mostly women, but still men, and some late teens. Smart and
And
motivated. Yeah.
couples,
And
couples
couple.
and sometimes families.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I'm working with individuals, and then sometimes I provide backup to other therapists. Like I
Mm-hmm.
might teach
Mm-hmm.
some DBT skills to another therapist's client so that we can have extra support, and I like that role as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good point for people to know is sometimes therapists can work together as a team to really support some clients who need that additional support. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So that's good to know kind of who you work with predominantly. Now with DBT, would you say that dialectical behavior therapy and just to connect that for people, I know you said when you were teaching in Montessori, mindfulness was a part of that. So for people that's listening, mindfulness is a huge part of dialectical behavior therapy. So just to kind of make that connection, would you say that that using those skills, let me say a couple of things. One is DBT kind of the main therapy approach that you use, and the other question is, are you finding that that is helpful for that group? And you mentioned highly sensitive person. So that's a term that I know people may be hearing more about highly sensitive people. So, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I definitely think that dialectical behavioral therapy has it all. I think
Me too.
that learning to have the ability to focus your attention to the present and where you want your mind to focus. So, not always worrying about the future or always regretting things in the past, but being able to focus your mind to the present. That's good for everybody. And
Yes.
then learning, what your emotions are and how to kind of steer them, put the brakes on them a little bit, maybe accelerate them a little bit. I think that's helpful for everyone too.
Hmm.
Distress tolerance skills, I kind of look at those as like your first aid for when you're in crisis. And when you learn those skills for yourself, you can get yourself out of some pretty tough situations, but also it's helpful for others. If you see someone who's having a panic attack, you have a list of these psychological first aid skills that you can share with them. And so it is very practical in that respect. And then interpersonal effectiveness. Now, I do think that DBT is not as robust on all of the interpersonal relationship skills as some other forms of therapy. So I usually will add in Gottman, which is like a couples therapy approach that was developed out of Seattle, and they're kind of like the gurus of
Yeah, I love
relationships.
Gottman.
Yeah, they've got their love lab up there, and it's very scientifically studied, these things that they're
Hmm.
talking about. And some couples have been studied over decades. And so
Hmm.
they've got a robust amount of information. So I throw in Gottman skills a
Hmm.
lot as well.
Okay, awesome. I love this, Amy. I love this. Yeah, Gottman. I mean, we could probably have a whole separate conversation about Gottman alone, but I'm hearing you say predominantly using dialectical behavior therapy, the mindfulness, emotion regulation, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, like using all of those skills, and then bringing in Gottman and other relationship approaches as needed. Let's maybe shift the conversation to that since we're gonna, and just so people know, I think Amy, we're gonna probably have to do a part two at some point
Okay,
so we can
okay.
even dive deeper into this conversation about dating and healthy relationships. But if you could talk some, if we shift the conversation to dating, what are some of the challenges or concerns that you see people having who are dating? And let me just say this. I know we've been talking about people that we, like in therapy, and we've been talking about therapy approaches. But as people are listening, I'd imagine that whatever challenges we see are not just for people who go to therapy. These are just general challenges. So right now we're shifting the conversation just to a general conversation about anybody who has thought about, wants to, or are in the process of dating. So, okay,
Hmm.
so maybe we could speak generally like that. Some of the challenges or concerns.
Okay, I think that one of the big concerns or issues that comes up is that people will often let their emotions cloud their judgment and assessment over whether a person is a compatible partner. When we're
Mhm.
feeling lovey-dovey feelings, we only want to look at what's good. And we
Mhm.
aren't getting a really clear picture of who that person really is. And so
Mhm.
I think that, being able to understand that when you're having a lot of good feelings, you might try to push yourself a little bit more towards some logical thinking and make sure they're checking all of those boxes of things that
Mhm.
are really important to you.
Mhm.
Another one is like, becoming emotionally attached to a person. Like,
Mhm.
and by attached, I mean, just like your good days are dependent on them being there for you and them texting you. And if they hurt, you hurt. People becoming emotionally attached to people before they know them well enough. And so
Mhm.
they could be in love with a person who ends up having some pretty toxic traits, and it makes it much more difficult and traumatic to get out of those relationships. So jumping in too early is a big one.
Can I just
Same.
ask you something? I know you have several, but if I could just ask you something related to that. So what if people were to say, like, isn't it? Doesn't it make sense? Like, if you meet somebody and they seem really great, that you want to call them all the time, you look forward to them texting you back. Like, is that what you mean, kind of emotionally attached? Like, because we'll kind of maybe keep checking our phone. Did they text back yet? Did they text back yet? When does it come from just excitement to somebody texting back to now this is maybe not being balanced well in terms of now maybe I'm too kind of emotionally invested too early.
That's a good question. I think that it is you would need to know some basics about the person before you let your emotions kind of carry you away and get into that fun crush state. It feels
Mm,
wonderful. That feels
mhm,
so good. But first, you should see the person as they are and have
mm,
some trust over how the person generally responds before you allow yourself to get too crushy on the person.
okay. Yeah, I can see that. So your tip is say get to know some basics first. Get to
Hmm.
know, well, we would say some basics, get to know who they are, maybe something about their character, their values, who they are as a person, what they do from day to day, like something, who's in their life, something before we get, it sounds like too emotionally invested, right? So
Hmm.
so would that be a cue that maybe before we even know details, we're maybe sharing a lot of information with them, where we can tell that our emotions are kind of doing a lot up and down kind of early on based on how long it takes them to text back or if they called us back. Is it kind of,
Hmm.
yeah, okay,
Absolutely, absolutely. And I
okay.
think that, especially with people who've had a lot of, past relationships that haven't gone too well, I think that it's really important to go slow
Mm-hmm,
on wait for the crushy crushy phase, wait for that
mm-hmm,
love phase until you have some basic safety sort of issues
mm,
down. Like, are they going to validate my emotions? Are they going to, think about my safety, be
mm-hmm,
invested in my happiness? Like, you don't have to know
mm-hmm,
everything about them, but you first need to have a pretty good idea of how safe that person is because you
mm,
don't want to add trauma on top of trauma
mm-hmm.
with
I like how you said that.
relationships.
I'm just jotting that down in case we need to unpack that more throughout today. And then also maybe another time. I keep saying that, Amy, another time.
Gotta get
But
back.
like, right. So I like how you're saying, and people can ask themselves that, like, how safe is this person? Obviously, physical safety. Like, am
Mhm.
I physically safe? Do they respect physical boundaries? Right. So if I'm not, even some people that maybe they say, I'm not holding hands, I'm not kissing, I'm not doing any of those physical kind of intimacy things until I know more about you. If that's that person's boundary, then it seems like, would you say that's a part of that safety? Is this person respecting physical boundaries, obviously emotional boundaries, all that kind of stuff?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, a lot of times people get kind of queasy when you tell them to look at the person for I don't want to say flaws, but things about them that maybe are not compatible with you
Mm,
and your goals and values. At the same time, you're looking for things that you do like about them.
mhm,
People are like, oh no, I only see the good in people, or I only want
mm,
to focus on the good and happy stuff. Well, the thing is, you're not seeing the person for who they are. Like,
yeah.
you are falling for an, idealized version of this person. If you are going to have a true and lasting relationship, you need to feel love for them, flaws and all.
Mhm.
You need like, all right, I don't like that wart on his nose, but his hair is lovely, and
You're right.
there's so many other good things. And so I think that act of forcing yourself to pay attention to incompatibilities as at the same time that you're kind of assessing what you like about the person can
Hmm.
keep you from getting a little bit too lovesick too fast.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love how you do like that balance. So it sounds like be balanced about it and not judge that as bad. Because it seems like you're saying some people may have the narrative in their mind that I see the good in people, therefore that's what I'm going to focus on. So we have to be sure not to describe that and thinking it's being negative or bad by also at least observing or acknowledging. It's not judging that person or anything. It's just acknowledging them for who they are and where they are at that particular season in their life. And so there are
Mm,
some qualities that you have to pay attention to that says it's not good or bad, right or wrong, of course, unless it's abusive or something, but it's just not compatible with me and where I am in my life. And at the same time, here are some parts that are, these are just green
mhm.
flags, if you will. These
Yes.
are great and do align. And these other ones are maybe some kind of what yellow or maybe red
Yeah, we do.
flags.
Yeah, we do that. We're like, all right, I want red flags, green flags, and yellow fat flags for we may need to rule out, an
Mm-hmm.
issue with that, so we'll keep
Right,
an eye on that. So I think
right.
I think that's pretty important to do. And the way that I usually can convince people that it's good to have like an accurate list full of flaws and everything is that would you want to be loved for your flaws and all? Would you prefer to be loved for who you really are? It's okay that you're not great at scheduling, but you're fantastic at making lasagna, and they love that about you. We want
Mm-hmm.
to be loved unconditionally, and when we're seen as this perfect being, we know that's not true. We know
Mm-hmm.
we're not perfect, and so
Mm-hmm.
it makes you feel really insecure to be put on that pedestal as well. And so
Yeah.
I don't think we're doing anyone any favors by seeing them as all good.
Mm-mm. Yes, yes. I love that. I love that. It's almost when people are listening, if you need to pause and just sit with that for a second, because that was a nugget of wisdom that you just dropped right there, right? Like it's not fair for us to see that person just like all good or all, and then it's not fair for them. That's just, and it's not going to be healthy for then the relationship itself if it continues to grow, because it's just not balanced, realistic, or healthy.
Mm-mm,
Yeah,
not at
I love
all.
that. I
Not at
love that.
all. So,
Yeah.
so I
Mhm,
I think that I think another big one, a big
mhm,
relationship concern is having difficulty clearly communicating needs and boundaries. A lot of
mhm,
times people either have this assumption that they should just know or they're afraid of asking for something or setting a boundary because they're afraid that it'll make the person not want to be with them anymore. I always
mhm,
tell my folks, look, you need to know if they're going to respect your boundaries or not. You
mhm,
need to know if they listen when you communicate a need to them. If
mhm,
they don't, then the good information. Glad we have that.
mhm,
It may feel uncomfortable, but you're better for knowing it. And so
mhm.
getting people to be brave with setting those boundaries and communicating their needs. Be
I get
important.
it. Because it does require bravery and courage, right? Because if in there is some sort of what's the fear? If you could elaborate on that. If people are hesitant, what's the fear?
I think the fear is that they will seem too intense or too needy or too demanding, or maybe in the past they've had people who have mocked them for it or people who've
Mhm,
disrespected it. And so they might be afraid of setting those boundaries in a new relationship. So, I mean,
mm,
most people are afraid of rejection.
mm,
That's a big one. Afraid that they're
mm,
going to get abandoned for saying, I need this.
mm.
Like, if you get abandoned for expressing a need, that's good information to know. It's time
Right.
for you to go.
Right, exactly. It could be painful. And at the same time, it's like it's very good to let you know this is not going to be good for me. This is not going to
Mm,
serve me well. Especially I'd imagine if people are communicating and trying their best to accurately express and communicate a need or a boundary in a healthy way. and then somebody, or even just the best way they can, like, because I
Hmm.
want to be careful in just saying, hey, it has to be presented in a certain way, but
Right.
just say it the best way you can, get it out the best way you can, but trying to obviously do it in a healthy way the best you can. But like, if somebody disregards that, dismisses that, or invalidates, that's, yeah, no.
Not good. And a
Yeah.
lot of the people that I work with, the personality disorder folks, they're highly sensitive people who have been emotionally invalidated in,
Mm-hmm.
their childhood. And so it's like that is emotional invalidation is not a good mix.
Mm-mm.
So it is
No.
very important to know, especially for the clientele I work with, how are they with validating emotions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I want to just unpack a word you said real quick and just talk about, because it may be somebody listening that's wondering now what is meant there by emotionally invalidating. They may wonder, is that something that I've experienced or something like that? So if you could say a little bit about it, like how might somebody know that they have experienced some emotional invalidation in life that could impact how they experience dating?
Yeah, yeah. If you're saying, I feel uncomfortable with this, and someone says, "Oh, you're fine. You're fine. It's no big deal. You probably just had too much popcorn at the movies or whatever." So you're expressing that an emotion has come up in you that's telling you, "I don't like this," and they're saying, "Oh no, don't listen to that emotion." Or,
Mm-hmm.
a term a lot of people know is gaslighting. If that I think most people know what that
Mm-hmm.
means,
Mm-hmm.
having gaslighting going on. But also I think that if you know, let's say you're really sad, you would expect that your partner would come up and say, I know, it seems like you're sad, and respond to it like, all right, let me give you a hug. That's tough. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're crying and someone says, stop being such a baby, or you need to grow a thicker skin, that's that's going to hurt your heart. That's going to hurt
Mm-hmm.
your feelings, and you're going to feel like your emotions don't matter to them, or they
Mm-hmm.
think that your emotions are wrong or can't be
Mm-hmm.
trusted. So
Mm-hmm.
it can do a number on you.
Yeah, yeah, because that's tough because I'd imagine, I work predominantly with children, teens, young adults, and certainly even for, I mean, it's definitely for kids, but I imagine even for adults, of course, we all want to feel seen and heard and want to feel as though we matter. All of us matters. Our identity, our feelings, our thoughts, even if people don't agree
Hmm.
with what we're thinking or don't feel like we should feel what we're feeling or whatever, if they could create some space to at least seek to understand, right? So I'm hearing you say that, hey, if people in life or in previous relationships or, even especially with their parents or whoever cared for them, they experienced it found, a pattern of not being allowed to feel. I'm sure you've
Hmm.
heard people say that the only emotion that was okay was happiness, maybe anger, but sadness, being scared, get up, stop all that crying,
Yeah.
especially if they're male, boys don't cry,
Hmm.
wipe those tears. So, right. And so if there's a lot of messages that says that either I can't feel, I'm not supposed to, I should feel a different way. No, you're okay. Even if I know I'm not okay, but somebody's telling me I'm okay and I'm fine, then you're saying that could, first of all, do a number on people's heart, their emotions, their emotional state, and then could impact how how courageous they would be able to be to express their needs to their romantic partner when they start dating or in a relationship or even a marriage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really
Hmm.
good point. That's a really good point.
Wow, wow. It's so much to it, Amy. Like I feel like we're gonna have to come back to this because we barely. I thought we were gonna get through some more of our questions on here, but you've made some really good points about, if I could just recap it, people being able to balance, acknowledge their emotions, but also bring in some logic as well when they're in the dating process. To not be clouded, deceived by big, strong emotions, a big crush, and then you're not seeing a person or the situation in a balanced way for what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay,
I would say
thank
that's
you.
the take home point is
Hmm.
try to at least observe and assess potential partners in a
Mm,
balanced way. And if
a
you have
balance.
to force
Mm-hmm.
yourself to make red flag, yellow flag, green flag notes on
Hmm.
it,
Hmm.
then do. And it is not mean to observe what's incompatible,
Hmm.
for you in that relationship. It is I think the kind thing to do to see the
Yeah.
person for who they are.
The kind. I like how you said that. Isn't that, I think, Brene Brown that says clear is kind. So at
I
least
agree
be
with
clear
that.
with yourself. Absolutely. It's kind. It's kind to you and it's kind to the other person. And so the other thing you talked about is the importance of clearly communicating needs and boundaries. And we talked about the fears that's related to that makes it hard for people to do that. And we talked about emotional invalidation. So it's like we're just getting in. We're just getting in. I think this is just, we've barely scratched the surface with this. So just so people know just kind of what's coming up in our next part, we're going to continue to focus on how maybe even emotional wounds in early life, in previous relationships can impact dating. People in their relationship styles, sometimes people call it attachment styles, how that can impact dating, past traumas. We've talked about that some a bit today when it's been some adversity at the very least around emotional invalidation. We're going to talk more about mindfulness and then also this kind of balanced dialectical kind of thinking, and we'll talk more about what that is just a little bit. You've given some tips already. If we could just close out, I know we'll get and unpack this more and have other tips, but are there some other strategies? You talked about red flags, yellow flags, green flag, any other kind of tip or kind of advice that you want to leave people with about dating?
I think that it's pretty important that you learn how to validate your own emotions. So, learn when you're having an emotion to recognize what it is and then to take care of your needs. If you're feeling bored, get yourself an activity to do. If you're feeling scared, kind of assess the situation. Is there a real danger? Or do something to bring down your fear. I think it's really important that we get to know who we are emotionally and how we tick before we jump into the dating arena. So
Mhm.
I think that's like kind of the first step you got to do.
Okay. You say that's the first step. I love that. Validate your own emotions, self-validation. I'm pretty sure there's some information out there. I can't promise or guarantee what'll come up if somebody Googles that necessarily, but they may come across some good stuff if they enter in how can I validate my own emotions, self-validation. And then it seems like you're talking about self-awareness as well. Be
Yes.
aware of yourself, what your needs are, what your boundaries are, what are the things that kind of make you tick, that kind of stir up emotions for you. Develop
Absolutely.
awareness about that.
And if you
Yeah.
tend to those needs, so if you're
Hmm.
sad, you do something that comforts you and you are
Yeah.
able to take care of your own emotional needs, then it prepares you to go into the dating world without becoming like really dependent on someone else
Hmm.
to meet all of your needs and
Talk about it.
jumping from relationship to relationship because you
Hmm.
can't stand being alone because you
Hmm.
can't handle loneliness. So
Hmm.
learning how to tend to your own needs is pretty important too.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that next time. And people know on here periodically, I definitely want to be transparent. But Amy, I say that's something I had to work on myself, and that to me was a huge time in my life that I think really got me to another level of healing. Is saying, you know what, where am I getting my validation? Where am I getting my sense of approval, connection, love, all of these things that are to me legitimate human needs, right?
Yeah,
These are legitimate human needs that I feel worthy, I feel validated, I feel as if I'm enough, all of those things. So so for me, I'm a person of faith. So when I shifted that from saying I'm not getting that from other people and certainly not somebody that I'm dating, you know, but I'm going to shift that and get that from God, you
hmm
know. that I am enough in God. Right.
Hmm.
I am enough. I'm worthy. I am enough in my creator, so people have to
Yes.
find what works for them and what grounds them. But if I think about like my creator, like who created me, and it's just like, let me go there. Let me go there for love, connection, validation, all the things. Now, of course, we want to be in a supportive, healthy relationship. Now, other people can, but that's not the source and the foundation of it, in the
Right.
core. Yeah.
Right. And you know
Hmm.
what? Making sure that that you build up other forms of relationships, that
Absolutely.
you have plenty of people that you can
Hmm.
go to and reach out to when you need that connection. So
Yeah.
everything is not dependent on this one potential
Yeah.
partner working. So
Yeah, and I think that's the key part where you said dependent. Okay. And I can keep talking about this,
I could
but I love
too.
that. I just want to highlight that you said it's like we don't want to be dependent, right? That's where you get into codependency. That
Hmm.
means all of everything. People may talk about put it all of my eggs in one basket. They may kind of talk about it that way, but it's like that's the key word is what am I dependent upon? Am I depending on my sense of being okay? Is it contingent upon, dependent upon this person texting me back or them being okay or them calling me back or them doing something that I think they should do in order for me to be okay? Boy, that's a tough and we have to have awareness if that's what's going on. And as one of my dear friends would say, is to be in the truth of that. We have to be in
Yes.
the truth of that, to be curious about it, not judge ourselves for it, but be in the truth about that. That is what's going on. So how can I then extend compassion and that kindness to myself and just say, I need to work on that. I
Yep,
don't have to judge myself for
absolutely.
it. I just need to work on that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely. I
love that. And
love
there's
that.
people out there that'll help with that. So we have therapists out there where this is the conversation because in your sessions, would you say these are the things that you're helping people to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Got some good
Yes.
successes too. And I
Yeah.
guess we can get into a lot more of those details and maybe some examples if we meet again or when we meet again.
Yeah, when let's do it. We have to because this is high on the list, right? Relationships. If we think about what people are struggling with, people struggle with health conditions, people struggle with finances, but really another top one is relationships
Absolutely.
relationships. So we're definitely, hopefully we can find the time. We know, I know you're a busy person. You're out there helping folks and raising children and that kind of thing. So we'll definitely get a part two. Thank you so much, Amy, for
Oh,
your
thank
time of sharing
you.
your personal journey and then also sharing with us some of this wonderful conversation about dating and healthy relationships.
Thanks. I love
Thank you so
talking about it. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it has been another edition of Birthing the Gifts. It's a process conversation series. Again, thank you for joining us today, Amy. We look forward to having you again.
All right.